Hey guys, welcome to the Flickering Torch podcast. This is Gary, or Smite This, and with me today is Scott.
Or Mr. Dead Scott.
And we're going to talk about difficulty today and RNG.
Ew, RNG, why? Dear sweet God, why?
So, there's a lot of games out there that are coming back to difficulty and hitting the old retro arcade style difficulty. For a long time now, a lot of games were too much easy mode, in my opinion. And they're starting to bring it back, and roguelike is being very popular.
Oh, I love roguelike games. I mean, Spelunky for one, Rogue Legacy for one. The concept of permadeath, which is nice and terrifying at the same time, of course, has been coming back up more and more, which is great to see. It really makes you evaluate your movement, your skill, tests all those great things. Goes into those wonderful details. I apologize if I ramble. I'm a little buzzed right now. You've been warned. Terribly sorry, viewers.
So, yes, I actually haven't played Spelunky much. I own it.
For shame, good sir. For shame.
Yeah. I just wish it was co-op outside of being on one host computer and not.
That's true.
That's the one thing that annoys me. But I haven't checked for mods or anything like that. But there is a lot of difficulty that I'm glad for. Like, it ties in with our Darkest Dungeon, because that is difficult.
Very difficult until you learn the proper mechanics of it, and then it's still hard. I would determine maybe that's more RNG than difficulty.
Yeah, but it ties the two.
But yes, most certainly.
Because RNG can be hard, but it doesn't have to be.
No.
But then there's also games like XCOM that is RNG and difficult because I don't know how much RNG, because you could be 99% chance to complete something and still fail for like 10 loads. You could load the game 10 times and fail, and it's like that 1% is more,
curse that 1%.
Yeah, it's more like 100%.
Well, it does have 1 in it, so
yeah.
If you look at the math, I'm not a mathematician.
But I forgot a lot of the games, but like the old Marios when you were a kid, those were difficult.
Oh, most certainly, yeah. The old cabinet style and the old NES, SNES games. I mean, due to the limited content that was available because of technology for starters, games had to be inherently hard. I mean, I know we were talking briefly about that, but if you look into the concept of like maybe Burger Time, for example, a game that I loved playing on the cabinet when I found it and on my little Game Boy, that was all about high score and difficulty, and man, that shit got hard sometimes.
Root beer tapper.
Oh, root beer tap, yeah. Okay, so.
Oh man, I drop those glasses all the time. I still love playing that. Actually, I have it for my Super Nintendo. I think I have it for.
Yeah.
That's a good one, but like a lot of old games had a lot of difficulty. Yeah, and due to technical limitations and actually good design.
Yes, almost certainly. But that's one of those funny things I've always noticed, is that usually at the end of a generation of a console or a cabinet or what have you, you almost see the best quality games come up because they've actually hit the limit for what they can do technology-wise. So they actually have to get a little bit more creative. And I know I'm tangenting a little bit. I just want to bring that up.
No, it's a good point. If you think it's hard to put, but the more not more, I guess, if you have a certain amount of restrictions, the greater content you can create, because you strive to come up with unique and creative ways
within those boundaries,
within the boundaries. And definitely a lot of good games come from that theory, and difficult games.
Oh yes.
But like one difficult one, I would say, besides Darkest Dungeon or a lot of roguelike, is Dark Souls. But that one isn't so difficult you can't master it. It's just new players or casual players is really difficult. And it's still difficult even for expert players. As you get to New Game Plus and things like that.
Well, yeah, because you're considered a veteran in that series, where I've never played a single one. Where I imagine if I started playing, I'd just get my ass handed to me constantly.
Yeah.
As through that learning experience. But I've heard of veteran players, especially you, for example, when you're talking about it, how even you'll get your butt kicked about every 1 in 8 turns or something like that.
Yeah. Dark Souls 3, I'm running through that now, and even for playing the last 2 for hours on end, there's still things that get me. But that comes to also new mechanics they introduce and surprises in the areas and lores. Dark Souls is good at sneaking crap on you, which I love. But difficulty, I think, is very important in games, and I'm glad it's coming back. But I find that it lacks. I think games there should be a natural setting of difficulty. Easy mode. Unless it's like one of the Life is Stranger thing, like that, a story.
Oh yeah, kind of like Walking Dead, Tales from Borderlands, kind of that more narrative where you're just kind of experiencing it through the motions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those obviously shouldn't have difficulty. I mean,
right.
What would the difficulty be?
The difficulty is nothing more than just making those decisions in those conversations, and that's not more of a difficulty; it's more personal choice. Yeah, that's true. So I agree. There really shouldn't be a difficulty in that.
Hey, choices are difficult though. Because I'm very indecisive, so when I'm always doing that, I always sit there for like 10 minutes. I'm like,
I know, like light beer or full strength beer. You really have to weigh the pros and cons.
Oh, but shooters and stuff. It's like I'm glad they're bringing more realistic shooters to it because difficulty drives more skill instead of just like Call of Duty or something like that where it's just like, oh, you hold the trigger and run around, who cares if you die.
And we lost half our fan base right there.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad game, it's just there are aspects to it that require skill, but not nearly as much as like if you were doing what's a good one, Insurgency, things like that, or like 2-hit kills or
gotcha, yeah,
things like that, more like the military simulators. Those are difficult.
Yeah, oh no, most certainly. I mean, you don't take a bullet in real life in a vital organ area and tend to survive all the time. Yeah. That usually ends with death.
You can't Rambo it.
What?
As much as we want to be Rambo with the abs and holding dual M60s, just can't do it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm not that strong to hold one.
I'm fit for a nerd, but not that.
Oh yeah, so with difficulty in itself, that's the question is we are seeing more of an actual difficult mindset, something that's not designed necessarily for the casual individuals, maybe something a little bit more difficult, harder, as I'm repeating myself, of course. Again, you've been warned, I've been drinking. However, let's talk about those old school games again a little bit one more time. I remember one in particular from the SNES or Super Nintendo for you newer, younger viewers, such as Super Ghouls and Ghosts, or Super Ghouls and Goblins, I can't remember exactly.
Ghosts and Goblins.
Ghosts and Goblins, that's it. And so that game literally was, your armor depended on how many hits you could take, and it was maximum of 3 hits?
Yeah, it depends. Like you had a certain amount of lives, and then depending on what armor set you had, would be how many hits you can take.
But when you were down to boxers, you were one and done. Yep, I mean,
you were done. And that game, that threw a lot of challenges.
Oh my gosh, that game was so hard. Wonderful for the aspect of what it could produce and the skill level it took to play it.
The design.
The design too.
I'm a medieval fantasy kind of, so fighting monsters in a armor suit or boxers, either way. I've watched a playthrough of that, and that was insane to watch. Mm-hmm. I know I mentioned that before, but that is an insane thing to watch if you can do it.
There's definitely skill involved.
I love going because I want to go back now that I'm older and not a kid, and replay those games and see how bad I suck or I'm good at them. But I'm kind of afraid because if I'm worse than I was when a kid, shame on me. After all these years.
If you want, I have it on the iPad. We can grab it right now and we can do a live feed of how bad you suck.
No, touch controls, no thank you. Yeah. I cannot do touch controls. That is difficulty in itself.
It was difficult on the iPad, I'll be honest with you. Yeah. But yeah, it's refreshing to see kind of that difficulty come back. I remember that first experiencing that with where I really, as a young adult, realized how hard something was with Devil May Cry. And when I first beat that game, it was a challenge to beat on normal, and it definitely popped up with a screen of hey, did you want to go in easy automatic mode because you suck?
That's the taunt.
And it's no, fuck you. And then I realized, well, maybe I should. I did beat it on normal. Don't give me a hard time. Beat it on hard. Almost got through very hard, and a buddy of mine showed me of what Dante Must Die looked like, and I don't know how you survive more than 2 hits with that crap. You spend more time dodging than actually striking the enemy.
Yeah.
But I remember that being a true difficult game, and then the third one came out, because we don't talk about the second one, as viewers who know will agree with me on that. The third one came out, and I could only beat that on easy. It took me a while to get through hard or normal, and then I finally got to hard, but I was in college and things happened. So
Yeah, I loved Devil May Cry. That series was something unique when it came out. I felt it unique, and the style and stuff was great, but the difficulty was definitely each part it threw something new at you. And then the third one came along, and at the time I was only renting games, so I didn't own it, so I didn't have time, so I had to try to shove as much as I could. And man, that third one kicked my butt over and over, and by the time I returned it, I was like, I'm coming back for you. Like one day I'll come back. I will
have my vengeance.
Yeah, I still haven't finished the playthrough, but I remember like the third, the flying serpent worm thing or whatever.
Yeah.
That one, oh god, I don't even want to. That one's evil.
Well, I remember the first boss in number 3 where you fight Cerberus just before you enter the tower. Like, when I was playing on normal, I'm like, I got this. I've played Devil May Cry games before. This is no problem. That was a heck of a challenge back then. Now, mind you, too, I wasn't fully focused the whole way as I'm trying to redeem myself here. But it was definitely a challenge. It definitely put up a hell of a fight. And it took a while to recognize those patterns. And I'm assuming the new or current Dark Souls games are kind of in that same position.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, once you learn the patterns, it becomes a little bit easier, but you can't become overconfident.
Yeah, no, you can't swing too many times. It's not a hack and slash. You follow patterns. You learn the patterns. And the thing about the game is it's not permanent, so you can learn patterns and then master it. But for like the first time encountering a boss or something, you shouldn't be upset with dying. You're going to die regardless. Whether your experience plays, something in the game's going to get you.
But there's nothing wrong with, even if it is a roguelike game, dying is not necessarily a bad thing. Dying actually is a great lesson.
It's a learning experience.
It's a wonderful learning experience. Like, take, for example, Spelunky. You die constantly in that game. Constantly in that game. However, each death teaches you why you died. So, for example, hey, I didn't look down far enough and allow the camera to drop down. So when I drop down, of course I'm going to fall on spikes because it's my own damn fault.
Yep.
Or hey, the frog jumps weird that way. Good to know.
Yeah. I like games that don't tell you exactly, and you have to go through a learning experience to understand it. If it spells it out for you, then what's the point? I mean, it goes
into the concept of hand-holding, which hand-holding is good for a certain level. But if you talk about difficulty in general, since we're talking about it for the sake of this conversation, if it's truly a difficult experience, handholding should be an absolute minimum.
Yep.
And I'm assuming, and again, I've never played a Dark Souls game, so I'm relying more on you at this point. There's very minimal handholding?
Very minimal. They don't tell you anything. They're like, here you go, here's your stuff, fight your way out. I mean, at first it's it's easy. You got the basic bosses, but still, if you're new to the series, it still can kick your butt because it's the way the enemies swing and the speed at which they do things. It's difficult regardless. And no, they don't hold your hand. They don't tell you anything. That's what's great about Dark Souls and their lore and the whole mechanic is they don't tell you jack. They're like, here's a weapon, here's your health, and here's some healing items, but they run out. Good luck. Go find yourself a campfire, like a little bonfire. What am I going to do with this? And then you die, and you're like, oh, so that heals you. Good. And that's the game.
Death truly has a purpose. Death has a great lesson to teach in difficulty games.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, roguelike games, death is much more of a severe consequence. However, in certain games, death is just a great learning tool, which, as we've all learned throughout gaming, is that death is the kind of the ultimate teacher, if you will. The Grim Reaper is a complete and utter asshole, which I can attest to on a personal level, but we won't get into that.
It's a good motivator, because if you went through a game and didn't die, it's just like it should be more of a narration. I mean, what? Unless you're completely mastered it, but then it's like, why are you playing it so much?
So for a tangent on that, while we're talking about, I don't know if anybody remembers the game Prey. I played Prey for its entirety when it came out, when I was still in college. And it had a cool system. When you actually died, because of the character's beliefs in his Native American lore and history, you actually went into the spirit realm, where you had a chance to come back to life. I thought that was a kind of a cool idea and a great mechanism. However, you could die in the spirit realm, but it wasn't like a permadeath situation where you had to reload, for example.
Yeah.
So it did teach you what and what not to do, but there wasn't. It almost seemed like there wasn't that kind of same consequence.
It wasn't such a harsh penalty.
Right.
You had a chance to redeem yourself, but it still was something to enable you to learn a lesson, which is a good mechanic. Unless it's too easy to come back to your body or resurrect.
Once you got the hang of it, it wasn't that bad. But the better you did in the spirit realm, forgive me, it's been years since I played Prey. I think the more health you got when you came back.
Okay, yeah.
So
See,
it wasn't just a full heal.
Yeah. See, that's not bad though. If you came back too easily, then you could use it against the game in a sense, you know. And it after you get the hang of it, that's not a problem either, because the more you progress a game, the more you should learn, or the more you should grow on the game and learn its mechanics. So, I mean, it shouldn't treat you like you've never progressed throughout the game. So difficulty shouldn't just be based on the enemies have so much health, it just destroys you every time.
Right.
Because that would be the same, it would be boring through the whole game. It should always provide something unique and a different way to challenge you. New difficulty each part, you know, like a different boss is a different mechanic or things like that. Never just, you have to keep slashing and then they just smack you with one hammer and you're dead kind of thing.
Right.
Like, difficulty to me, what drives me nuts is the amount of health. Like Elder Scrolls is a good example. Is you have a difficulty setting, which I hate difficulty settings to an extent. But their level of difficulty is you have a slide bar, you know, a little slider to make it harder or easier, and basically let's just tack on a crap ton of health. So this mountain lion can one-shot you, and it takes about 40 hits with a freaking broadsword to kill it. So,
so it's more of a sponge at that point than actually like more of like it has different phases. So at full health, it's easy to tackle. Half health, it becomes a bit of a challenge. Last ditch effort, it really comes at you.
Yeah.
I could see like a progression like that for difficulty being easier than said sponge, as we've learned with the Division, where certain enemies are just bullet sponges.
It makes more sense in MMO.
Yeah, I can see that because the progression of the fight.
Yeah, and I mean, you have so many, like, you're multiple people, you know, unless you're going to throw hordes and hordes, which would be horrible for rendering in a, you know, massively multiplayer game. It's I guess I can't blame it on limitations, but it's a decent design for multiplayer games like that. But for like Elder Scrolls, it shouldn't be the case. Bosses should be something unique, something that gives you actually a challenge to provide you. You know, you have to learn a new skill set,
right?
Or something.
An opportunity to grow, not only as a character but as the player itself.
Not just waste your time.
Right.
I hate my time. I have limited time to play games, so I don't want my time wasted just by hacking an enemy. I mean, come on, when a like a mountain lion takes like 30 hits from a sword, I'm like, really?
When in reality, a mountain lion, if you hit once with a sword, would probably run away.
Yeah.
If you successfully hit it, mind you. Not suggesting that to the viewers by any stretch. That is your disclaimer. Oh my God, don't listen to me.
Do what you want, but
I do not condone that. Continue.
What? I forgot what little. I like being. So back to like a shooter, I like being killed easily, actually. In a lot of instances, but I like enemies dying easily too. So when it comes to difficulty in that, I like being able to die easy, and it makes me have to maneuver and think about my situation. But I also like killing the enemy easy. Like, shooters are a good example. It's like, oh yeah, so I can die in 1 or 2 hits, so I have to be strategic with my movements. Mm-hmm. But I also like killing the enemy because then it doesn't seem like, oh, that's an unfair fight. You know?
Right. I know a good example of that is when Gears of War 3 came out. I was playing with my one of my old professors, his brother, and one of his friends, and the 4 of us did Insanity mode, where 2 or 3 hits and you were toast.
Yeah.
However, the enemies took a lot of punches, and it definitely seemed a little strange on the balancing act of that. I mean, if their bullets were stronger than mine, by theory, it should have been equal with the name of the difficulty.
Yeah.
We managed to successfully beat the campaign. It took us days, actually weeks, the more I think about it. No, actually probably close to like 2 months. But we did sessions of it, you know, like 2 hours here, 3 hours here, because, hey, we all have obligations and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I remember we all died a heap ton. Mm-hmm. I mean, thousands upon deaths. Whereas, you know, us killing the enemy was, you know, we'd get through a section, we'd get our asses handed to us, we'd get through the same section, then get to the checkpoint, and go from there. So the difficulty itself there, it was good. It was a good balance, but I had more fun because I was doing it with people.
Yeah.
Whereas I think like a solo experience, if I was doing that by myself on Insanity mode, I would have quit a long time ago.
I've done Gears of War Insanity by myself. It's not... I like Gears of War for its story. Its gameplay is fun, but when it comes to the super difficult settings, I really like other people there because it's just a challenge. Period. It's like
it's the same thing with the Left 4 Dead series. I know with those, like 3 of us would play the first Left 4 Dead. We'd play on the hardest freaking difficulty setting, and we had the AI as cannon fodder because there was almost no other way to do it. Because if you had a fourth person you did trust, somebody would fuck up. It just happens. It's the way it goes. Yep. I was that guy a couple times. I'm willing to admit it. But somebody always drops the ball. And, that's human nature. There's nothing wrong with that. But the difficulty on that, at least with Left 4 Dead, if you got the headshot, I'm pretty sure you could take him down with 1 or 2 headshots in the highest setting. There was that kind of equal balance where the enemy could drop as easily as you could drop.
Yeah. See, I like balance with difficulty.
And so that's the tricky part of it. How do you develop a game that has the proper difficulty with a good balance to it where it doesn't seem truly unfair?
See, when you bring up to the point where it's fair that you screw up and, you died or someone was going to die, but it felt fair through it. But if you go to an MMO where you're in a raid and you screw up, you cast the wrong spell or something.
The whole raid wipes.
No, the whole raid, and then it just pisses everyone off. Mm-hmm. It's not a fair balance, although it is funny because my bro, Leroy Jenkins, is forever preaches
forever remembered in the geek culture. Yes.
See, that's like unfair because you work so hard, and it does provide difficulty and a challenge, but it's almost like an arcade mode, like the old Asteroids. It's difficult, but really.
Well, I remember raiding with people where you get so tired of doing the same fight over and over again. The monotony of that challenge of mastering it that 1 or 2 different ways that are only available. Yeah. It's such a harsh consequence, because I forgot to provoke the enemy to switch aggro to me, for example. Mm-hmm. I'm severely punished and the rest of the group wipes. Or because the enemy turned I was a tank, by the way. The enemy turned the wrong way and petrified everybody. Yeah. There's a simple blame to that. It's the guy who couldn't keep hate. Yeah. Or because I died, it's the healer's fault because I didn't have enough HP. Now, mind you, there's a little bit of shared joint in that. I'm not blaming healers. You guys have a hard job.
Thank you.
Thank you. I could have popped a defensive cooldown, but when I pop everything and I'm still dying on that aspect, either we're not geared for the fight or somebody dropped the ball, sadly.
See, that's what's weird about MMOs and difficulty is there's so much requirement to do the difficult content, and it's not necessarily difficult as it is spongy, because it's like you have, for one, the skill bar is just mastering your skill bar in any MMO is difficult. Props to whoever learns all 600 spells available to you by the end level.
Right. Or masters the highest skill setting.
Yeah, like World of Warcraft, you're going to utilize all 8 bars they provide you. I don't actually remember. I stopped after the first expansion, so I don't remember. But that alone is difficult, but that's a whole nother type of difficulty. But that's a weird difficulty. It's a bullet sponging. I mean, that's one way to go about it, but I don't think that's what a lot of games should do, and I don't prefer it.
Yeah, I don't feel that's true difficulty. That's nothing more than just endurance. It's survival. Yeah. It's horde mode status.
It's a cheap way to make difficulty or to make end game content, which.
It's a good stepping stone for certain people, but at the same time, sometimes it lacks that kind of creativity you really need. If I have to do a certain set of requirements to master said boss, and there's a lot of different mechanics that get mixed into it, cool, it's a great learning experience, it's really fun, it can provide that good level of challenge. However, when it can just be, infuriating to no end, that's when the fun starts to disappear in difficulty.
Yeah. Fun and difficulty, it does exist, and to make difficulty fun, you have to have multiple ways where you can tackle a situation and beat the challenge.
And then, that's it in a nutshell. You shouldn't be forced to 1 or 2 methods. Now, obviously, there is the cheese method, and I only bring that up because I've encountered cheesing methods before, and there's no shame necessarily in using those. It's however you want to play. I'm not here to judge and say, you need to do it the proper way. I've cheesed games numerous times because of the exploits of clipping or good timing or good sets of skills or just general strategy in itself.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't.
To be fair, the other day, Rainbow Six has a bug where your legs stick through the wall on occasion, and some guy was sticking out, and I had my whole group around, and I could kill this guy and make it a 4-on-5, but I shot him once in his leg, because if I knifed him, it would have been instant kill. It counts. So I shot him once in his leg with the pistol just to warn him he was there, and then we did the match, and I felt good about myself. I'm like, you know what?
This is very kind of you. I mean, I don't think I would have had that same moral compass. I might have shot the dude
I had
right
to bring
there.
it up, it's my paladin standards. I had to keep it there. Good standing.
Oh, look at Mr. Gary. All holy.
Awful good over here.
Oh my gosh.
No thanks. Chaotic neutral, maybe. I miss the old arcade games like Centipede.
Oh,
that was
wow.
challenging. I miss like Galaga and those old style. All those are very simplistic difficulties, and the challenge was a high score. I mean, due to technical issue or hardware issues, you couldn't create much, but it was brilliant to create a difficult game with a high score, which challenged people, and especially since you'd get your friends together in an arcade
most
center,
certainly.
it's hours of fun, and I bet those people still remember spending all their hours, trying to hammer out one level.
Well, for me, it was the bowling alley that I worked at, which was also had a movie theater in it, and we had the Star Wars trilogy game, and it had the old joystick. Where it was a lot of blaster shooting and a little bit of lightsaber battles and whatnot. And I remember a coworker of I on our breaks would each do like a one playthrough run, like with you put I think it was like 50 cents back then. You put your 50 cents in and you see how far you got. We both got so good that we had to do it on our lunch breaks because we could actually beat the whole game on one entry play.
Yeah.
However, we got to the point of high scores, and that was the challenge of it. And we found ways to cheese the system because you either pull the trigger and it fires, where you could actually like thumb and pull the trigger at the same time, and it would double fire. And so we would shoot for high scores, and that bastard still has the higher score compared to me.
Go reset the game.
Well, it's been years ago. I'm sure it's been reset. But that motherfucker has the higher score, and it's just because like during one of the lightsaber battles with Vader, I totally botched one swing and took a hit. And had I survived that last swing, I could have beaten him because I had the higher score. And I'm going to admit, it slightly pains me to this day, even though I'm 30 years of age now. And I was doing that back when I was like 15, 16, whatnot. But it still pains me that even though it probably doesn't exist, he had a higher score than I did at one point in time.
Shame on him.
Yeah.
I don't like people having high scores than me, but I will admit, because I'm not the best at every game, I will give people due credit.
Well, yeah, give credit where it's due. I mean, he earned that high score. I'm not taking that away from him.
Oh, yeah.
Does it suck that I lost it? Yeah, but we're not going to get into my tragedy here.
But what we forgot to talk about is tying RNG in that difficulty. I love RNG because we talked about it in
hate RNG.
Darkest Dungeon podcast, which go check it out if you guys haven't.
Please.
Flickering Torch podcast, Darkest Dungeon.
We're desperate for views. We love you.
Yeah. Please save us. No.
Hi.
We do this for fun, so if you watch or not, it's up to you, but hopefully tell your friends. But RNG is a brilliant piece, and it could be difficult in its own right, although it's random. So Dungeons and Dragons is a good example. Darkest Dungeons is a good example. Roguelike. A lot of roguelike games are based off of RNG.
And sadly for me, RNG and I are not really on speaking terms a lot. I've
no, because you're dead.
Well, it's true. I've always had the absolute worst luck with RNG. Now, mind you, there are moments that it will completely surprise me, but I've almost adapted the mindset of knowing that anytime said RNG, random number generator, whatever the hell you want to call it, RNGesus, comes into effect, whatever you want to call it, the deity of RNG will currently just flip me off just because it has to.
Yep.
And, to some extent, there is the challenge involved in that, which is where we have to tie in with difficulty. And RNG is, in itself, a fair system for what we have to work with. However, it is an absolute disgusting, cruel mistress at times.
Yeah.
To the point where I've almost been in tears because of RNG.
RNG can provide difficulty, but it also strips difficulty.
Most certainly.
It's a hard thing to master, but to get things as random and as real especially when it comes to like a lot of sword fighting games and damage calculators, it's like, well, you can't really. I mean, they're getting to the point where like, oh, the tip of the blade cuts you. You know, it does this much damage if the tip cuts you.
Right.
And nothing's truly random like you would actually be in a real sword fight or things like that. But the old method was just RNG. You know, you hit the enemy, you get a roll like Dungeons and Dragons, and you just keep chipping away until you did it, or you got a critical hit. RNG was the way to make difficulty.
Right, and I think, regarding dice rolls when it comes to RNG, because even though it's not a calculated random number generator, it is still a random number generator.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've only ever hit on a D20 20 maybe twice in all the times of playing. Now you witnessed the 4d6s I rolled that all came up as ones.
Yeah.
And if you all don't believe me, I have a photo I can show you.
Yep. It was first roll too. He's like, "What? I'm gonna roll ones."
And
I'm like,
boom,
I don't believe
all
you.
ones.
Yep. They weren't even loaded dice.
Wait, they work?
No, they weren't.
Oh, okay.
No.
So that makes so much sense.
If they were loaded, I'd hope they roll 6.
Oh my
unless you're
God.
doing Snake Eyes, but so RNG. So it's most of you guys might not know about the tie-in of RNG, but you have
Teach us, oh professor.
Yeah, so a lot of games that use RNG, you have positive and negative modifiers due to your skills, gear, and upgrades and things like that. So enemies typically have a lot higher of modifiers than you, and you have run a number generation. But typically, let's say Dungeons and Dragons is, I keep referring to it because it's probably one of the originals. So you're like a wizard, and you have a certain amount of health. Let's say a D4.
Ew.
For health, yeah. And then so you're fighting this stupid barbarian. If you haven't taken him out or you ran out of spells, you're gonna have him using 1d12 against you with his two-handed battle axe, and that's where RNG comes to kill you. So there's the difficulty in surviving aspects where the game is against you because they're more powerful. But at times it can be your savior when you roll 1. It creates those exciting moments. It's kind of hard to explain the difficulty, though, that RNG provides.
Well, because RNG in itself is, it gets into the concept of is random truly random, which is a great debate that we might talk and touch on later. Because, I've had moments of RNG, as you've witnessed already, where literally I will roll the 1 multiple times in a row, or I will hit a lower setting or a not successful situation, or even in a calculated situation where it's a computer-generated RNG system, it will still find a way to take me in one form or another. It will still find a way to bend me over and royally take me with no loop.
Well put.
And now we're just putting an adult setting. But it's astonishing. I can't complain necessarily. I can for the sake of complaining, but
Oh, you complain with RNG.
Yeah, the system's the system itself. It's RNG. It's designed to be incredibly fair, incredibly cruel, or incredibly generous.
The difficulty really relies on you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
With random numbers. Like you have a set number of actions which are going to happen when this dice rolls or when this number is generated. You don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So the difficulty comes from that. Not to mention like when Darkest Dungeon, their aspect is it's going to be hard regardless. Depending on how the dice roll, is it going to be a lot harder or is it just going to be a little bit easier on you?
Now, mind you, with that, it does give you the percentages of success and fail.
True.
Which does help you calculate and give you a little bit of an advantage with RNG.
Yeah.
Mind you, it still is truly RNG.
Yeah.
Just because you have a 90% chance doesn't mean you're going to successfully hit.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. But that gives you... Because with RNG, with true like random number generation, there's no skill. It's a chance game,
mm-hmm.
right? So when you have modifiers and things like that and percentage chance, you can actually make a skill-based system. You can actually allow players to learn the game, basically.
Right. Give them
gain skill in it, opportunities, things like that. Master it, basically. And that's what I think a lot of games do these days to provide difficulty, is to use random number generation and provide a way to harness RNG a bit so it doesn't seem like it's just completely random. Because when you're playing like, what game is it? Like poker or anything. It's random. Well, no, you can count cards in poker.
Well, but in the actual computer system, so like a digital version of poker, Not everyone can count cards, mind you.
Yeah.
But there may be an RNG system in there comprising of multiple decks, and you don't know how many decks are involved. So in theory, it could be truly an RNG situation.
Yeah. What game is like Life? That old board game, you know?
Oh, the Game of Life? Yeah. Grew up playing that.
I mean, that has some different things to it, like paths and stuff you could take, but really, you spin a little dial. That's a pain in the butt to spin. I hated that thing. Whoever played Life, you know how much that thing came off its track.
Or it didn't spin.
Yeah, that is, 1 to 10. It's completely chance on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no really difficulty, I find, in just completely. I mean, there could, if you made a game completely on difficulty, it's more of a difficulty of unfairness than it is like the game's created to be difficult.
So that's the question then along the lines of difficulty. Is difficulty truly a measure of how fair or unfair a game is, or is it just something that provides a challenge that can be overcome? And that's a good question for the comments. If any of you listen and or care to comment, you can give us your opinion on that.
That's where it's tough. That's a debatable situation, but it takes from both sides,
mm-hmm.
really. I mean, difficulties should be presented. Yeah, that's a tough one.
And so that might be kind of the advantage of difficulty in general, is it's almost a personal experience in one form or another, which is a good and a bad thing. Because one person's level of difficulty may be what you and I consider normal, whereas our version of normal may be considered someone's version of easy, difficult, or dear sweet God, why put me out of my misery?
And that's why they give you different modes or challenge modes. But
so it hits a broader spectrum at that point. However, that's the question too: is it truly just a question of fairness, or is it just the challenge of learning and growing and learning a new skill set, learning a new dexterity level, what have you?
Yeah. I still think easy mode, even though, some people might be on a lesser level of gaming and things like that, I still think there shouldn't be an easy mode. There should be a normal mode, hard, and difficult. There shouldn't be an easy. Because games right now with an easy mode are just too easy. I think the games they give in too much for casuals, for like really casual players, because you should provide a challenge. You shouldn't just be able to walk through the game. I think you should be forced in some sense to learn it and not just have your hand held the whole way through.
So with that then, would you say that there shouldn't be, like, if the story, let's say the story is subpar, it's just like a hack and slash or a beat 'em up or a shooter or whatnot, and the story's not really the main driven point. So would you say in that situation there shouldn't be an easy mode, whereas if there's more of a compelling story, there should be an option for easy mode for those who just want to experience the story?
Well, if you want to, if it's a really story-driven game, there probably won't be a difficulty setting. It would be more of a narrative kind of game. Gears of War is a good example that has a really great story and has modes to it, but I don't think easy should be part of it, because the whole setting is a very cruel, grimy world that's torturing you, and I don't think if you have it on easy, you could literally shotgun someone from days away and still get the kill, and I just don't think that really feeds into the story of what it is. I mean, that's a specific example,
right?
But I just that easy mode is just too easy to cheese enemies and things like that. Yeah, you want to enjoy the story, but those games typically turn more into the narrative, like The Walking Dead and things like that.
Right, and that's the thing is, like, I have nothing against easy mode, as long as like the story is compelling, because as we are seeing now, games are a form and generation of art, or storytelling in one form or another. So I'm not necessarily against it. However, I do definitely see kind of the side that you're going with along the lines of, like, you should learn how to play the game at least. You should learn how to master those challenges, because they can be accomplishments. They can be great moments of pride. Yeah. For example, when you and I watched the video of that one guy who had never played Dark Souls actually finish the final boss, like you were saying how much of a great of an accomplishment that is. I haven't experienced that yet, but there are those moments where it's like, hey guys, like, I overcame this situation. Like, I pulled it off. I know, like, Dead Space 2, for example, they had impossible mode where you could only save your game 3 times.
Oh gosh.
Which was absolute torture. I managed to get pretty far into it before I kind of just gave up. But, I mean, I felt a sense of accomplishment making that far into the story. I mean, I was, like, near the, like, last 1/3 of the game. And mind you, that first 2/3 was absolute pure hell. My God. Oh, dear sweet Lord.
I haven't actually played Dead Space. I still have it sitting on my shelf. And
the first one was great, make you crap your pants. Difficulty level was fair in its aspect. It was hard.
Yeah.
Even on normal, it was hard. Second one was really good.
See, but that ties into the story. It's like if it's supposed to be an easy light game, there probably shouldn't be an easy mode an easy mode. There shouldn't be an easy setting. If it's supposed to be a difficult, scary game, you know, you could have normal, but you got to still make it hard. There shouldn't be an easy mode.
Right.
It should be, you know, hard for anyone, and well, not hard. It should be difficult for most, and then you have your totally extreme nut jobs who want to do, you know, insane modes. But I mean, that's a good example. It's like the game usually is built around the setting, and I think easy mode is just to appeal to the masses in a sense. But I think it kind of takes away from
it's definitely it can definitely be seen more as a marketing ploy of like, hey, we made it easy for everybody, like, you know. But mind you, there are games that are geared and designed towards that. So for example, and I absolutely love these games, no one judge me on this, the Lego games.
Oh, yeah, those are fun.
Those are fun. They're fun. They're inherently easy, but they're a blast. Like, so there are games designed towards that, and the Lego games have progressed as time has gone on. I remember playing the first like Lego Star Wars game, and, you know, it was just a you know, kind of sound, and now we've progressed to full voice acting, like actually like a fun story. It's cute. It's whimsical. It's designed for the broad masses. There is no difficulty setting. It just is.
I'm excited for the new one, just saying.
Yeah, me too.
See, the game is built around just is, right? There's
right.
no difficulty setting. So that's why the easy mode, it's like, well, the game's probably going to be a lighthearted or something aimed for it to be easy. I don't know. I just, that's one pet peeve, I guess, is that one cheeses me a little bit, having an easy mode. Yeah. And that's a whole discussion in itself, and, you know, you guys could put your input in the comments, obviously. And you could disagree with me. That's fine. That's what the whole thing is.
Most of us do. It's okay.
Yeah. I only have one document saying I'm crazy. Okay.
Only one?
Only one.
You sure?
Yeah. Well, I burnt the other ones.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that doesn't count. There's no evidence at that point. So.
But this could go on for hours. But I mean, difficulty is shown in many, many different ways, and I love difficulty, and I think there should be somewhat. Besides, obviously, narratives, like we talked about at the beginning, there should be difficulty in most games, because life's a challenge, and overcoming the challenge is where you truly learn and live in life.
No, that's true. I mean, life absolutely sucks at times, and, you know, by even the simplest thing of making it through the day, or completing a project at work, or, you know, being a halfway decent human being, being a loving parent, husband, what have you, wife, you know, those things should be seen as accomplishments. They really should, and not just dismissed as, you know, normal societal crap. And so, yeah, I mean, games should almost follow the same boat, you know, like, you should feel pride in what you've done, and I think that's where the achievement system or trophy system has come into play, just to kind of give people an essence of that. That's a completely different concept, mind you, and topic. That's a whole nother one. We'll talk about that. Yeah, we definitely will.
But that's, I mean, obviously there's exceptions, like Stardew Valley is a good one, because that's just a happy game. There's no difficulty to it.
We are going to do a whole session on that, people. I swear we will.
Yeah.
It'll probably be the next one.
But there's no mode setting to it for easy or not. But it's just a happy game. It's aimed to be happy. I mean, obviously all games shouldn't be difficult, although it does have some difficulties to it, like you're based on time, and if you're at the very, very like 24th done or mine level, and you got to make it to 25, getting those blocks out of the way with like,
and it's 1 in the morning.
Yeah, so that could be its own challenge, but not all of them have to have difficulty. But if you're trying to provide a challenge to someone, it should actually be somewhat challenging. There shouldn't be a way out of it.
Right. There should be no Deus Ex Machina, if you will, divine intervention, or easy button. Thank you, Staples, for that quote. But yeah, there should be there should be some form of a challenge or an accomplishment, because that's how life is. Yes, we breathe automatically, but we still have to eat, we still have to work, we still have to find all those things to help us survive and make ourselves happy.
Yeah.
In one form or another. I'm not saying everyone's happy. You don't have to be happy. Not all of us are happy. I'm not happy. But details.
I mean, if you I want you guys, before commenting and stuff, is to think about, what you've done in life and how you've learned from it. Do you usually get things handed to you and you're like, oh yeah, that's going to stick in my head? No, you always had a challenge or something you've accomplished. You worked hard to do.
There was a bad experience you overcame,
Yep.
or experienced full tier.
Yeah, so I mean that's when things stick to you and where you learn and become the greatest. It sucks to have difficulties in life, because I would love people to throw money at me, but that would probably get boring.
Wait,
too.
that doesn't normally happen?
No.
Really?
Well, quarters, they hurt though.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I haven't encountered this situation, but it sounds wonderful. I'm totally on board.
Yeah. Right. But that would wrap it up for today, guys. Have any last comments?
No, that's about it. Just thanks for listening. Continue to listen. We'll get on Stardew Valley eventually. We'll start talking about achievements.
Yeah.
We'll talk about pre-orders. We're going to talk about all that kind of stuff as time goes on.
And give us your ideas of what you want us to talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about random crap, things we don't know about. I'm great at bullshitting my way through a conversation.
Yeah, like this, last 45 minutes.
Wait, that was me bullshitting?
Yeah. Well, at least I was. But anyways, that wraps it up, guys. Thank you for joining the